Salve Omnes, and welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to talk about the testing grounds. Thank you to everyone who participated in my survey on my community tab. I have read your comments. Some are for the changes, some are against, some think the game is basically going to be dead, but we're mainly split in the middle of good and bad changes. And this is where I fall. I like many of the changes in the testing grounds, and my goal for this video is to make sure that you have as much knowledge as possible about the changes in the testing grounds so you're all informed when completing your survey. If you do play For Honor regularly, and you have an interest in the future of this game, then it's important information, as the results of the survey could lead to changes in the live game. It's important to understand that this is probably the biggest overhaul to combat since the Season 5 parry changes. Free guard break on parry before then. Dark times. So, I'm going to give a quick rundown on the testing ground changes from a mechanical point, and how it differs from the live game. My opinion on the changes, what I think is good and bad, and what I would like to see become implemented into the live game, and finally a brief channel update. So first things first, the testing grounds is for improvements to the overall fight system in For Honor and is running up until the 12th of March. Despite it being in low activity on both PC and console, you won't have to wait long to find a game, and you should play with the changes for a few days to get a feel for them and better understand how it will affect the game, especially if some of these changes do make it live. The developers have stated that the goal of the testing grounds is to improve offense and consistency. This means you will have the ability to attack more often, hit your opponents more often, take less damage overall, and make the game more accessible by making indicators and animations a lot more consistent. So I'm going to break these down so you can better understand what they are, how it works, and more importantly, how does it affect the game compared to what's in the live version. The developer's opinion on the live game at the moment is that it's currently too defensive. It's easy to block and parry attacks, particularly against strong opponents or basically highly skilled and experienced players who can react to your openers. So to change this, the plan is to move the game towards a read-based defense instead of reaction. Now, a read is basically where you try to anticipate your opponent's next move and act accordingly. The changes implemented will make mix-ups more viable, so heroes don't just rely on the strongest tools in their kit. For example, Conqueror's Shield Bash, Delayed Bash, Guard Break mix-up. Consistency improvements are utilising a new technology to help with attack animations and indicators. In the live game, sometimes red attack and orange unblockable indicators can flicker. This is where the icon appears for a brief instant before disappearing. Some of these indicator flickers can even be exploited to a degree, such as the case with Shaman's Bash. The intention, of course, is to prevent these flickers. Freeze has already made a video showing this and other aspects of the testing grounds, so I'll leave a link in the video description, as I recommend that you watch that video alongside this one if you haven't already, before you complete your survey. This new technology will also treat all attacks in the game as if they were delayed. There will be no more intentionally buffered or delayed inputs. They are now all delayed, meaning that your chain attacks will come out at the latest possible time whenever you press a button. This does not mean that your attacks are slower. In fact, in the testing grounds, most of the attacks are actually faster. Now, it's important to understand the distinction that it is actually chain attacks rather than all attacks, despite what's in the patch notes. So, on screen, I'm going to be showing you a few examples of what I mean. These were all tested in a custom match against a bot inside the testing grounds. There are characters in the game that have attacks that can be buffered or delayed. These are examples of dodge attacks, so Conqueror's Shield Bash is one such example. Kensei is another character who has a variable timing dodge attack. There are others in the game too, like Shaman and Orochi and Berserker, etc., but the point is to demonstrate that only chain attacks are delayed in the testing grounds, and dodge attacks maintain the ability to be buffered or delayed. This new technology also improves the comfort of using zone attacks, making them more consistent and easy to pull off. This is true, I've had no missed zone attacks while playing in the testing grounds, whereas in the live game, I've often used a dagger cancel on a minion when trying to clear the mid lane. So, onto the patch notes themselves. Visible attack speed. Every attack in the game now hides the first 100 milliseconds of their animation and indicator to opponents. You as an attacker will see them, but your opponents will not. These changes will also affect feints, soft feints and cancels to make them more believable and difficult to react to. Now, what you may or may not know is that when you play online in multiplayer PvP in the live game, there is a speed increase of 66 milliseconds to attacks. So basically, a 500 millisecond light attack is actually around 433 milliseconds. In the testing grounds, that speed increase is now 100 milliseconds as opposed to 66. So a 500 millisecond attack is now a 400 millisecond attack. So if you're in the testing grounds and a 500 milliseconds light attack is coming your way, you will see the indicator at 400 milliseconds and the attack itself will be that speed, 400 milliseconds. In the live game, the 500 millisecond light will show its indicator for the full 500 milliseconds, but the attack itself will actually be about 433. In a nutshell, attacks are faster in the testing grounds. Recipients of attacks also do not see the first 100 milliseconds of the animation of these attacks either, making them harder or even impossible to react to, further solidifying the goal of a read-based defensive system. Now onto stamina changes. So normally when you miss an attack, have your attack blocked or parried in the live game, you lose stamina on top of the stamina cost of the attack that you threw. These have all been removed in the testing grounds. This basically allows you to fight a little more aggressively and encourages players to throw attacks out more often. Damage reduction. So across the entire cast of heroes in For Honor, damage values have been changed. They are for the most part lower. This is a change that basically synergizes with faster attacks. Players are likely to get hit more, so lower damage means kill times relatively stay the same. Some damage values, however, have been increased to standardize the cast a little more. There are some exceptions and what I believe to be bugged or glitched damage values across certain attacks in the game, as some of them make absolutely zero sense. We have outliers like Conqueror's Top Heavy dealing 14 damage and his full block counter only dealing 16. Gladiator's Skewer doing 20 damage on top of his 35 bleed, Lawbringer is back to having 50 damage light parry punishers, and of course Shaman's Bleed Stab and Nabushi's Cobra Strike dealing well over 30 damage, if only to name a few. I wouldn't look too much into these out of place damage values as I expect they are not intended. The patch notes indicate that specific attack nerfs have been given to Orochi's Top Light Opener and Zone Attack to make them a little slower. Shaolin and Lawbringer's Top Lights have also been reduced to 500 milliseconds. I can't say for certain about Shaolin, but Lawbringer still has 400 milliseconds Top Light Openers, which in the testing grounds is 300 milliseconds. As with some of the bizarre damage values, I expect Lawbringer's Top Light not being slowed down is merely an oversight on the developer's part. The patch notes also specifically mention Orochi and Nusha and their chain lights now being easier to dodge when used after a light attack. This is indeed the case, but I think the intention of this is to change all 400 milliseconds chain lights to make them easy to dodge when you're hit with a light. In the live game, if you are hit with a light attack and the follow-up chain light is 400 milliseconds, it cannot be dodged. It doesn't matter how fast you buffer your dodge input, dodging will not work, so even if you've been in those situations where you swear to yourself that you dodged that attack, well, you didn't, but that's because you couldn't. These 400 milliseconds chain light attacks, while they can't be dodged, can actually be deflected by assassins, but this is because deflect frames start up 66 milliseconds before iframes do. In the testing grounds, these 400 milliseconds follow-up lights that occur after you're hit with a light attack can now be dodged, so characters like Orochi, Nusha and Peacekeeper now have 400 milliseconds follow-up attacks that can be dodged by anybody in the cast. Just like with the outlandish damage values on some characters, there are of course some characters that this rule doesn't seem to apply to. Tiandi's chain lights still behave as they do in the live game and are undodgeable, and Valkyrie's chain top light also behaves this way. These are once again likely not intended and would be fixed if these changes went live. There is a video on YouTube, courtesy of the Filthy Spaniard, titled Countering Light Spam in the Testing Grounds. I will link it in the video description and I encourage you all to watch the video as it will give you a much more in-depth understanding about these particular changes with the visual representation. It is a must-watch for regular players of this game. Light and heavy finisher recoveries have now been standardized at 700 milliseconds. So what this basically means is that if an attacker hits or has their light finisher blocked, they recover slower than they do in the live game, and if they hit or have their heavy finisher blocked, they recover quicker than what they would do in the live game. Once again, I'm going to refer you to that video by the Filthy Spaniard, but the gist of it is that, for example, if we have two Orochis facing each other, Orochi A hits Orochi B with a triple light chain. As soon as the chain is finished, both Orochis hit light attack at the same time. Now in the live game, they would trade with each other, but in the testing grounds, Orochi B would hit Orochi A first. This is called frame advantage, so the gist of it is that spamming lights more than ever is going to get you killed while you're in the testing grounds. Now the opposite is true for a heavy finisher. Let's say Orochi A hits Orochi B with a heavy finisher, and once again, once the chain is over, both characters hit each other at the same time with a light attack. This time Orochi A will hit Orochi B again first, because of frame advantage. Now, before I give my opinions on what I think about the testing grounds, I am aware that For Honor recently just updated the testing grounds with more changes, mainly fixing damage and speed of many of the game's attacks. So some of the things I've already mentioned in this video, like Gladiator's Skewer for example, have now been fixed. But this video has been recorded over several days before I knew about the changes. So just to preface, I am aware the game has been updated and some of the things I've said aren't accurate anymore. Now, for my opinions on the testing ground changes. Zone attack inputs being more comfortable, this is a dream come true and I absolutely think this is a positive change. Stamina penalties removed on being blocked, missed attacks and parried. I love this change too. Far too often heroes are starved for stamina trying to get their offense started, so these are great changes. I do think that there should be some stamina penalty for being parried though. Make it significantly less than what it is in the live game and I think we're good. We still need a way to consistently get people out of stamina when we punish them with a parry. Regarding hidden indicators and animations for the first 100 milliseconds of all attacks. I'm on the fence about this one. Hidden indicators aren't too bad as they do allow more attacks through, and as I've learned from playing on PC, this is a change that we need as players get parried quite a lot. You can on console too, but of course players on PC have light parry timing down. It becomes a point of conditioning them by throwing heavies to catch them, but by that point you've probably already eaten a few heavies by being light parried, so I get the argument that PC players will probably like these changes more than console players will. All of my videos are of PlayStation 4 gameplay. This is the platform where I have most of my experience with this game, so I do see both sides of the arguments. Now when it comes to 100 milliseconds of hidden animations, this is a change I really do not like. Some characters look very awkward and stiff now. Warden's double side light looks very robotic when you're hit by it. Berserker's faint into light looks like they are constantly lagging with a potato for a broadband router. Basically a lot of things look wrong and feel cheap. One of the biggest complaints about reworked Raider back when it was released was the broken animation skip on Storming tab, and it took a very long time to fix that. Why would we willingly go back to animation skipping when it caused us so many problems before? I have no idea, but it is a change that I firmly stand against. So basically, 100 milliseconds hidden indicator is a fairly positive change. It lets people attack more often. I think that's what a lot of PC players want because it brings them closer to console. But with regards to animations, this is a terrible change. I do not like it at all. And I think it just makes the game unfairly clunky, especially against characters like Berserker, for example. So, all chain attacks being delayed. I'm against this change. Yes, I understand that it's one fixed timing that everybody has to learn now, and that kind of makes it easier for newcomers to catch up to experienced players. However, what you're doing is reducing the skill ceiling of the game. For Honor is intending to be more competitive like an actual fighting game, and you don't achieve that by reducing your skill ceiling or removing whatever complex mechanics you already have in the game. Another change I'm not too happy with is 400 millisecond chain lights becoming easier to dodge. This looks great on paper and it sounds really good, and especially if you watch the Filthy Spaniards video, it's going to look really inviting. My concern, however, is that this will promote stalling and slower fights. Players will likely rely on dodge attacks to counter light attack happy opponents, so what will end up happening is players won't be going further into their chains when these lights can be dodged so easily. They will likely just try to bait out dodge attacks and punish them. Now, I don't like getting hit by 400 millisecond chain lights as much as anybody else, but I main Peacekeeper, so I dish out my fair share of these fast chain lights, and they can get parried. And I can parry those fast lights too, on prediction, not reaction. If the game is trying to achieve a more read-based defense system over reaction, then this change is to its detriment, as it will stop players using their full chains, it will also shift player pick rates away from characters who don't have a dodge attack, and it will slow down fights in the long run. Lower damage across the board, absolutely amazing change. Added to the fact that you can now throw out light attacks, and if you get parried, you're not exactly losing a great chunk of health because of the lower damage, and you're not losing all that stamina. This is a really good change. It helps make fights feel more dynamic, more energetic, more aggressive, and we have been dying for a change like this for a long time. Now for my favourite change of the testing grounds, standardised recoveries on light and heavy finishers. This is hands down the best change we've had since the parry changes in Season 5. This adds depth, character matchup knowledge, mind games and a whole new level of skill to For Honor, as it makes frame advantage easy to understand and makes a fighting game technique now a staple of For Honor, the frame trap. Knowing how your recoveries will work, you can now punish would-be light spammers with guaranteed damage just by paying attention to the last finisher used. By purposefully using a heavy finisher, even if it's blocked, and you know your opponent likes their light attacks, if you throw a light of your own, you get the advantage. You hit them first, boom, frame trap. On the flip side, you now have to respect your opponent if they hit you with a heavy attack because it's not your turn to attack them. You would lose the exchange if you tried. This adds so much depth to the game, and I beg you, I implore all of you, when you fill in the survey, tell the devs that you love the recoveries, because this is an absolutely phenomenal change. Now, dodge attacks seem to be unaffected in terms of these recoveries, as there are some dodge attacks that act as chain finishers when they are blocked. Peacekeeper is one of them, for example. I believe Zanhu is another. But for now, absolutely fantastic change. I can't wait to see if this makes it into the live game. Finally, the idea of read-based defense over reaction. Now, most fighting games succeed because of read-based defense, and this is good for the most part because fighting game fundamentals require ambiguity in mix-ups. These are situations where reacting is impossible. These fighting games typically also work because you're in an advantageous position before you force reads on your opponent. They're not done from neutral. You can start a combo from neutral, and halfway through that block string or combo, you can make your opponent guess whether you're going high or low, and that's where you open them up. You can also score a knockdown and then force a mix upon them. For Honor doesn't have these. Now, I think instead of making everything a read, what we need to do is focus on better improving each character's toolkit. As a quick example, let's have a look at the characters of Peacekeeper and Shaman. Both of them can soft feint into guard break from heavy finisher. Now Shaman is probably more likely to get this guard break successfully than Peacekeeper because she has an unblockable heavy finisher that Peacekeeper doesn't have, and as we know, unblockables are good pressure tools that force your opponent to react. So that's about it for my opinions regarding the testing ground changes. I just want to briefly talk about the future of my channel. So for the moment, I will not be making any more guides until we know what changes we'll be making into the live game. Some of the changes in the testing grounds, like lower damage, faster recoveries, slower recoveries, all attacks being faster generally, and attacks being delayed, will affect things like max punishers for out of stamina in terms of both the damage and what attacks could actually hit. Needless to say that a lot of information in my existing guides could very well be outdated, depending on what makes it into the live game. So in the meantime, please let me know what you would like to see from me. More ranked gameplay, more Dominion, Tribute, Breach, montages, random character gameplay, that sort of thing. This channel will always aim to educate and inform, but I really want to be good at that entertainment part too. I don't have particularly fancy thumbnails and I'm still learning all the ins and outs of editing. This channel has amazingly reached over 5,000 subscribers and I am so very grateful to all of you. I feel pride in what I do and you all make every video worth it, and I want to keep going strong. So please let me know how I can improve as a content creator and I'll do my best to live up to that. To conclude the video, I'm just going to remind you all to fill out the survey giving your feedback on the testing ground changes to Ubisoft. It's really important that we maintain communication with the developers and tell them what in the testing grounds we like and what we don't. Now I've given you my opinions, but you need to be honest and tell them what you like and what you don't like. Make sure to fill out all of the survey too. It will prompt you to either continue going on with the survey or just leave it as is. There are several pages and they ask a lot of good in-depth questions that I think everyone will have an answer for. Now, regardless about how you feel about the testing ground changes or what's actually in the live game, the developers are giving the players a lot of power and influence to make the game we all love better. Now, with all that finally said, I think I've talked your ears off long enough, so I'm going to leave the video here. Thank you all so much for watching and for supporting the channel. Hope you enjoy the testing grounds, hope you enjoy the changes, hope you give your feedback to Ubisoft whether you like them or not. Anyway, that's all from me. I'll see you in the next video. Ciao for now.